What's up, all you haters and perpetrators? It's the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, week 2 of the preseason. I'm Joe Frick. That's my boy Drew Hannis, aka Dr. Drew. Drew, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm late, so I'm going on to tweet out the link and tell people to come roast me for being a half hour late. This is on me. How
It's
are
tough.
you doing?
Drew the dad, it's tough out there, man.
Fatherhood, I'll tell y'all, I have not been on time for literally anything since he was born in December, and it is now August. We'll see if it ever changes.
Probably not. Maybe once Noah's 18, but until then, we're at the mercy of mechanic and control. So that's tough. But you know what? That's why we're here. So let's do the show. Big fan of the show. Just popped into the chat, so we got to show a little fan love. Ricky Donks, right where we expected him to be, as always. But hope you're doing good. Hope the drafts are going well. Yeah, man, let's just get right into it. So the spirit of what we're doing right now has been mock draft season. So if you're with us last week, we took a look at drafting from like the earlier positions. Today we are going to start with being on the back half, and then so we've hit the front, hit the back, and then we're going to work the middle a little bit and see what happens in the mid rounds. Drew, from what you've seen mocking so far, is there a position that you've enjoyed or found yourself like, hey, like I really like the teams that I'm mocking from at this point?
So fortunately for me, all of my picks and all of my redraft leagues, I'm picking around 4 and 5. So I've been picking the mid the whole time. I haven't done much, early or late. So I haven't really seen that much there. That's why last week when I talked about a couple guys that slid to me in round 2, when we were in the early position in 101, it was much less likely for those guys to fall. But I like the middle. I had my choice in one league to pick in the middle because I won last year and I was able to pick my position. So I prefer being in the middle. I like being able to, not wait too long in between picks. I don't have to feel like I have to reach sometimes. I like to just follow my board. And if I do enough mocks, I kind of have a good sense of 2 or 3 guys that are always there for me in each round. So I prefer being in the middle.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, I like to be on the bookends, I think. I don't necessarily like to be right on the horn pick, so like the 1 or the 10 or the 12, wherever your league size is. But I do like having the back-to-back picks. I feel like I enjoy and can kind of sequence the way that I want to draft, knowing that I have like, all right, 24 picks in front of me, and let me go pick the 2 best players that I want, and not like, all right, let me look at this chunk by chunk. I feel like I get sniped a lot in the middle.
Yeah.
So got to keep the head down and just keep it grooving.
I think it works well for you because you're very good at just following the board. Whereas I come into each draft and they're like, these are guys that I don't want to miss. I want these guys on my roster that are my guys. And I feel like if I want to get them and sure enough, I'm going to get them, I have to reach sometimes. That's why I prefer not to be on the end.
Yeah, because you're not too far on the reach.
Right.
When you're in the middle, yeah. So
exactly.
I think Ricky in the chat also sentiments there. If you want the back-to-back picks, yeah, get on the bookends. The middle is good if there's a run. So yeah, that's a really good call out. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into it. So if you weren't with us last week, what you'll see here is that we are going to dive into the Fantasy Pros Mock Draft Simulator. Just need to get the branding going here a little bit so we can see what's going on. So there we go. You can see all the pretty faces. So if you're unfamiliar with the draft simulator tool for Fantasy Pros, essentially this is a way that you can quickly do mock drafts. I think one of the things we were talking about before the show is that with this, you are drafting against a computer. The computer is probably going to do more optimal decision makings than you might see in a draft that you do amongst live folks. So one of the things that we've been talking about offline is just, hey, like, who do you think is going to be here in these different ranges? I think that one of the keys and takeaways from this draft is that this is probably going to follow more of an ADP and players to look at, players to target. I think that after doing probably 20 or 30s of these over the course of the last week for these different slots, I think I've keyed in on a couple of different strategies based on the spot that I'm in the drafts. But ultimately, one, this is something that we do for fun, maybe for a little bit of cash if you're into that kind of thing. So make sure that you're getting the guys that, if there are people that you don't want to leave without, go and get them. ADP isn't going to matter in week 4 when the guy that you drafted because his ADP was the highest is averaging 5 points per game And you always have a lot more fun whenever the guys that you kind of put the flag in the ground for hold it down for you and do those things. So for this particular mock that we're looking at here, so we did the 101 spot. We're doing the 10 teamer again, just so that we can keep up with the kind of the 10s across like the rounds. But ultimately, you can follow this and translate this with any size league that you have. And then we're going to hit the tail end. So we'll be at the 110, 201 pick here. So anything else for you, Drew, before we get started?
No, man, I'm ready to roll. Let's do this.
All right, cool. So I think one of the things that I've noticed being on the back half of the draft, it's really going to be interesting to see what happens. Like from the receiver perspective, I feel pretty locked in about who I want to target from a running back situation. I have some dream scenarios that I would love to see happen that I think are unlikely, but possible. And that would be that Justin Jefferson somehow slides to wherever you're at in the back half of the drafts. I think he is being slightly undervalued. We look at what he did last year, even with the backups of Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins. He still came back and had really strong performances with them. Obviously losing our favorite Michigan quarterback to start the season. I'm not even going to say the name so I don't get criticized by Drew once again. But I think that regardless of how Sam Darnold does, they're going to find ways to get him the ball. So if I'm drafting 7 through 12, if JJ's there, that's my guy. Strongly considering him even at the middle areas of the draft as well, but I think it's unlikely that he slides there. Drew, with the guys that we see on the board, I know for me, back half of the draft, I'm looking at kind of hero running back strategy. So taking a receiver here and then taking what I would say would be my pick, Jonathan Taylor, would be the running back that I'd want. I think he's going to have a really good bounce back season. Outside of last year, been very injury dependable. But from the receiver side of this coin, who are some guys that you're targeting potentially?
You know me, I am a huge Puka Nacua guy. We talked about this last night. I know you're a little bit more concerned about his injury than I am. I don't think it's going to hinder him too much. Garrett Wilson is far and away their number one, their best receiver. They don't have a lot of competition there. I'm not really feeling Mike Williams coming off a torn ACL. I think Garrett Wilson, if he's there, when you get a bona fide one like that, he's the guy you would take in that situation, even though I'm such a big Puka guy.
Cool. All right. So let's lock in that. Let's lock in the Jonathan Taylor pick. Do
any
you have any concerns
before you? Would you give any thoughts of Gibbs here before we lock in Taylor? I mean, I'm good with Taylor. I probably pick Taylor at the end more so than I would pick Gibbs, but I think that Gibbs is the higher upside play. Taylor's like the safer floor type player.
For sure. Yeah. I think the hamstring injury does concern me a little bit. It sounds like from what they said from Lions camp that he's not going to play against the Steelers, but they're going to expect him to come back like pretty much right after that. So given that he's still young and spongy, I think that he will bounce back fine. I just feel that, especially in the early rounds, you may have a situation like last year where it's like, all right, Christian McCaffrey is outscoring everybody else in his position by 10 to 12 points. I almost go more risk averse in my early rounds. And it's like, all right, who is going to not make me lose? I think Gibbs, knowing that offense, knowing the amount of mouths they have to feed, knowing that Montgomery is a goal line back, it's like there is a greater upside of him busting than Jonathan Taylor, I think. So for me, it's more of a safety thing. But if you think that Gibbs is that guy, I think at one point last year, he was actually the RB1 for Dynasty. I don't think it's a bad pick. I think to me, it's just Jonathan Taylor. He's still young, good offensive line there. There's not really a whole lot that I can say against him.
The only other thing, let's lock in Taylor, but while it flows, any concerns about the bye week for Jonathan Taylor being so late?
No, I don't care about bye weeks. I never draft thinking about bye weeks. I just let it rip and see what we got. So moving into the third and fourth rounds, now I guess this year where you start getting into more decision making. I do love the value of Drake London here. I think this better aligns with where his value should be. I don't really like taking him in the back half of like the second or at the turn like we did in our own draft last week. But I think this is a much more suitable outcome as far as value goes. When you're thinking about the tight end position, Drew, are you interested in dabbling in the tight end room right now, essentially you have your pick of all of the tight ends on the board, essentially, except for Kelce. It looks like Kelce went at 305 in this draft. But usually when you're attacking a draft like this, especially if you're going 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, you can essentially, if you prefer to, go after a high-end tight end or go after a high-end QB. Do you feel a need to attack any of those positions right now at the 3-4 turn?
No, I mean, I'm really high on Laporta. If you can get Laporta or Kelce at a really good value, it's something I think you should jump at. But I think the tight end position is deeper than any year we've ever had.
Which is so funny because a year ago it was tight end wasteland. It's like Travis Kelce or bust, and now it's like, okay, now there's 10, 12 options that people feel pretty good about,
and they're legitimate options too. It's not like last year when Kyle Pitts was on a prayer. Like, he has a good situation now. Laporta could theoretically be the third option passing now because they're hyping up JMO so much. We'll see. I mean, I don't necessarily buy it yet, but why risk it this early when Evan Ingram, who there was only 3 players ahead of him in total catches last year at total receivers.
I think the concern for him though is that a lot of his damage came when Christian Kirk was hurt. And you saw his numbers decline a bit when Christian Kirk got hurt. They've invested in Brian Thomas. Like, where does he fit? I think it's obvious that he's going to continue to be the safety valve for Trevor Lawrence, but what is that upside there? Is it another top 5 season? Maybe, maybe not. But I think there's also a lot of like sexiness in like, hey, there's these new young hot tight ends. But where does he fit into that? I still think that he has a strong role in that offense. He's somebody that I have in a few dynasty leagues. Feel really good about having him there. So to me, it's like if you can get somebody like him, somebody like Ferguson, even Pitts is sliding quite a bit. George Kittle sliding quite a bit. Don't really love the Kittle pick just because of the Ayuk still tentatively being on the 49ers. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of options and you can wait. And I never like taking a quarterback early. I would prefer to go, if I'm going to do it, I think tight end is the way that I would jump before I would jump into the quarterback realm. So I feel like from a value perspective, let's lock in London. What are you thinking as far as that 4th pick? To me, I would almost rather go receiver again, unless you wanted to hit up Laporta or Jackson, if you felt strongly about either of those two.
Let's go into the actual positions here too. I want to see what we're looking at.
Yeah. So you pretty much have your choice of quarterback except for Josh Allen. So the big 3, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and then Patrick Mahomes. Then from a running back perspective, Rachaad White is somebody that I like a lot as a second running back. Josh Jacobs, I think, as well, could do a lot better than people expect. He's still pretty young. The Raiders were in such a disarray whenever he got picked up. I feel less good about James Cook. I think that he's kind of being drafted at his ceiling, especially with Josh Allen just being such a hog for red zone carries. Looking at the wide receiver options, we've got Waddle, Pittman, Mike Evans, Nico Collins. I like Jalen Waddle a lot. I think that he has been underappreciated just because of how things worked out with injuries last year. They said something it was either a day or two ago. They were like force feeding Tyreek to try to get him to 2,000 yards. I don't see them doing that again. So I think that I really like Jalen Waddle in that 4th, 5th round. If you can get him there, I think he's going to have a really good bounce back. Tight ends, essentially anybody that you want that's not Travis Kelce.
I like Waddle a lot too, and I do see myself drafting him a lot, but I am concerned about he seems like just an injury-prone guy. He was struggling with injuries when he was in college, came in the league. He's been hurt 2 out of 3 years now, right? It's definitely something to be concerned about. It says he's hurt now. I'm trying to figure out what that is, though.
Let's see. It's a minor injury, they said it's first 2 weeks ago. But all right, so which direction you want to go? Is there a position that you want to target? Is there a player that you want to target?
I've seen myself a lot not taking my RB2 right away. I've been a lot of hero ball. Okay. I think why don't we mess around here and just go with Laporta?
All right, cool. So we'll lock that in. We get back to the 4-5 turn. So let's just kind of go through some of our options here. So Anthony Richardson, a lot of upside. Points per game basis last year in the 2 games that he finished, we're looking at 28 points per game, which is pretty insane. I think that the injury concern part of that is very real. Amari Cooper, I think, is going to be poised for a great year. I think he is going to exceed like wide receiver 24. He has a lot of opportunities. I don't like the other receiver options that they have. But yeah, let's see what we got going through the position. So from a quarterback perspective, Richardson, we said that we liked. We've talked ad nauseum about how we think that Stroud is being overdrafted at QB6. And same thing with Burrow, just the lack of rushing, not really a lot there. I think it's way too early. Fantasy pros would agree. Way too early to be thinking about Kyler Murray here. So I think if you want to go Richardson, you can. My recommendation would be, since we've already taken a luxury pick with the tight end, I wouldn't recommend turning around and getting a quarterback as well. I think one of the things when you're thinking about drafting, the less teams that you have in the league, the more premium players that you want at that position. So I think in a 10-team league, you do think about that. But I know for me, like in a 12-team league, I need to make sure that like I have ample depth. I'd rather have studs in the running back position at the receiver position. If I try to go quarterback, tight end, then my flex position ends up being pretty nasty. And then I just don't really like that. But from an 8-team perspective, from a 10-team perspective, you need guys that are going to put in those top numbers. So I think the smaller teams that you have, I'd rather have an Anthony Richardson where I can kind of make that happen and kind of have a guy that has that quarterback one upside. And then there's always going to be someone available on the waivers to really kind of make that happen and figure out what you want to do. So you're at 10 spot, you're right in the middle. To me, I wouldn't go QB here. Bossman, Zachary Smith, definitely like the Laporta pick. Much sexy indeed. But Drew, where you leaning? So do you want to see any of these other positions?
I kind of like the value on Richardson here, but I totally agree with what you're saying. It might have made more sense not to take Laporta there, huh? Based on where we're at here. Of course, size 2020. I think I'd rather go in the wide receiver route.
Okay.
Kind of interested in Zay Flowers. The T. Higgins situation is getting very interesting considering he's not the one that's holding out now.
Which is kind of a huge douche move if you think about it, right? Like T. Higgins has this contract dispute. They tag him. He shows up to work every day.
Yeah.
And then Jamar Chase watches all that unfold. Yeah. He's like, nah, I ain't playing. Like that has to hurt if you're T. Higgins.
Yeah, I think that T. Higgins is gonna ball out this year. You know how I am. I like to follow the money or follow the guys that are trying to get paid. I like Higgins here. I like Zay Flowers here a bit as well. I still think that they want to make him an elite wide receiver one. They've tried to force feed him the ball a little bit. I'm not really an Amari Cooper fan, to be honest. So if it were me, I'd probably look at T. Higgins as one of the picks. Okay. I'm okay with you.
I don't love the whole bye week 12 has become a pit of death, but we'll deal with bye weeks when we get to week 12.
We just have to win everything else before we get there.
So yeah, that's totally cool. I would rather do that and have that 1 week than worry about it. You also have so many injuries, trades, everything else that it's like it's not worth trying to figure all that out. All right. So then on the flip side, are you feeling any type of way? I think in one of the next two, like in this pick here or in the next pick, I'm probably leaning running back. Just looking at the cheat sheet, you still have a lot of startable options. So you have Stevenson, Connor, Aaron Jones, Monty, Najee Harris will probably be there in the next round. And then you have like the Mostert, Javonte. I want probably 2 of the next 10 guys that are here. So I'd probably lean on taking a running back here, being able to snag one on the next pick, and then start shopping around for other positions. So any particular running back that you're feeling strong about here?
Of the guys here, I prefer James Conner. I think that now that Kyler Murray's back, they have a legitimate wide receiver one. And then Michael Wilson's a really good, solid player as well. I think that it's going to open up more lanes for him. And I obviously, if you pick him, you need to potentially waste a roster spot later on with Trey Benson, or just really be aware of the waiver wire at that point. And I like DeAndre Swift quite a bit too. I was thinking about it more. They really paid him.
Yeah,
they gave him legitimate money. Zamir White's interesting. The only thing here though now is that I don't want to miss out on Kyler because he's my last quarterback that I consider a starter in this range.
Yeah, and I think right now, like you've pretty much filled out your starting lineup. So at this point, if you wanted to go Kyler, I would be willing to go another cycle and pick up Jaden Daniels later. I do think that Kyler Murray possesses that opportunity to be a top 5 quarterback, so I totally get the pick. Looking at the wide receiver situation right now, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin feel good to me. I think Tank Dell, Keenan Allen probably being overdrafted this year. So I don't feel as great about those. But looking at the players here, I don't really care for Zamir White. So I would say if you want to take Kyler, I'm good with that. And then probably I'm leaning to get another running back. I would probably out of this group take Najee, especially with the Jaylen Warren injury, knowing that he's not on a 5th-year option. To me, it's like, all right, like they're going to run him to the ground.
Yeah, I agree with the pick here. I'd probably go Najee. I'm interested in hearing maybe next week we talk about it on like a Tinder about Zamir White because I kind of have a different feel for him than what you're saying. But yeah, probably Najee. And wait, I keep getting confused by the board. I thought Kyler went. That was weird.
We just took Kyler.
Oh, you did take Kyler. Okay.
Yeah.
And Najee came back around.
Well, we were at the end.
Oh, I thought you had made a pick right. That's my bad. Okay.
No.
Yeah, and then we're back up then with the double. Yeah, and Swift's still here.
Yeah, so we have one pick out of the 3 running backs.
Oh, I keep thinking that I see it moving. Okay. Yeah, I mean I prefer Najee here. I like Swift. I like White, but Najee seems pretty safe. I like Brian Robinson here too if that's actually him coming back. But
so this is going into the 9-10 turn. I'll be honest, I don't really like this team. I'll be curious to see how they grade it out. I'm not feeling too passionate about it. I feel like because we took Murray and Laporta, we have absolutely no depth for any of our positions. If we're looking at the running backs now, it's like you're already into like the Brian Robinsons, Tajay Spears, and then like guys who are kind of right now starting running backs, but we'll see what happens. From a receiver perspective, I think there's a little bit more meat on the bone still. I think JSN is eventually going to slide into a wide receiver 2 role this year. I think that's where he's being drafted for. DeAndre Hopkins, we'll see. Cortland Sutton, I think too early to take him, but I think he's a really good value pick there. And then we'll see what happens with some of these other guys. But if it was me, I'd rather be looking at Jaden Daniels right now and like an Evan Engram or a Jake Ferguson.
Yeah.
But that's why you do the draft. So
I like those guys too. I just think that there's some running backs here that might be undervalued. I think that where they're going, I think that they're reasonable starters. I think Brian Robinson is going to be a good starter this year. I think Tajay Spears to me is a better player than Tony Pollard. Hopefully if they use him more in the passing game, he could be a reasonable flex for it. I like JSN a lot. I think that some of these other guys, you're looking at the numbers. There can only be 20 running backs that are in the top 20, obviously. But like, I think that all these guys have.
You say 20 running backs are going to be in the top 20?
No, I'm saying like you can only have 20 guys that are scoring.
Oh.
But I feel like these running backs have potential to be inside the top 15 any given week. It's just that they're going so much later. Like I think Brian Robinson has that upside. Sure. I think that Tajay Spears has that upside, but they're all being drafted so late because they're not sexy picks. So I hear what you're saying. I just think that all these guys are reasonable. And I agree with you taking Ferguson here too if we didn't go Laporta.
Yeah. All right. So how do we want to attack this? I think this is going to get graded out as a B- if I was to guess. So do you feel passionate about any of the wide receivers? I know you mentioned Brian Robinson. Do you want to snag him? I probably would lean Spears. I think he overtakes the starting spot at some point. They're listed as co-starters, but I was surprised that they even signed Pollard because Spears looked so good last year.
And they're essentially the same player.
Yeah.
I mean, preseason, you can't really take anything from it really, but Brian Robinson's been on the field way more often than Eckler. That's why I feel like I'm higher on him. But I'm okay with Spears too, because I like him almost equal, but
cool. All right. Well, we'll take Robinson. And then do you want to start looking at options from the receiver room? Would you be interested in any of the guys here? Do you want to look at the board?
I mean, I'm interested in JSN.
All right, let's rock it. Okay. So coming back now, Jaden Daniels still there, 12th round, pretty solid value. We can see here, Evan Engram also available. Just because he's going to be a backup. We already have a lot of people in by week 12, but it doesn't matter because Laporta is not. So I don't know why they're doing that. But okay, so if we look at our running back options, you got Charbonnet, Gibson, Dowdle, McLaughlin. If we're looking at the wide receivers, I think Cortland Sutton's a really nice pick here. Jordan Addison probably being criminally underrated here because of the injury and looming suspension. I don't think it happens this year. So I think that knowing that we don't have really a whole lot of options on the bench right now, I would almost double dip and take Sutton Addison. If you really are feeling froggy, if you wanted to get Jaden Daniels as a backup for Murray, I probably wouldn't waste the roster spot, but I get the vibe if that's something that people are into. But the only other player I think I would really be interested in, I think a lot of these would be a reach at this point based on where we're at in the draft. I do like out of these four, Dowdle and McLaughlin. But to me, I'd hammer it home Sutton, Addison, and keep it grooving.
Zach is pissing me off in the chat. My God.
I think you said what I said. I think I heard you correctly, even if
I'm
maybe
supporting
you said
what you say all the time about how, like, okay, yeah, like this player has a lot of upside, but there's so many good wide receivers. Who's he overtaking? You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. Like week over week, there's so many good players that you expect to be in the top 15. But I think that these guys are being drafted as like RB30, but they have the upside to be in the top 15 any given week. That's what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they're not just going to ride where they're at. I think that their value is really good on some of these running backs. That's why I see myself drafting one running back, and there's been mocks where I don't touch another running back till like round 6 or 7 because I just feel good about it.
All right. So while we breathe on that moment, I'm double tapping on Sutton and Addison.
Addison for me isn't really the injury, there's suspension. I just don't know if Darnold can support multiple guys.
We'll see.
That's where I think he's being drafted that low.
All right. So real quick, we only have one more bench spot, and then we get into kicker, punter, our defensive team, and kicker. So we do have a question in the chat. I'm assuming that this is going to be for a redraft, Harlan. So welcome to the show. If you are doing this for a dynasty trade, we'll probably leave this up and keep chatting, and then we can get that feedback from you. So it says, should I trade away DK, Diggs, and Reed for Olave, T. Higgins, and Odunze?
Yes.
I'm trying to see here.
If he's trading away DK and Diggs and Reed, I would, in its dynasty, I would smash that.
Yeah, I mean, I love Rome a lot. T. Higgins is what, 26? And I feel like Olave and DK Metcalf is one and the same to me. I think that T and Odunze, I would take that over Reed and Diggs every time.
Yeah.
I actually probably would take this in it regardless of format.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, but dynasty, it's a smash. How often do you think about the Roman Odunspire? Like nonstop. If I felt really good that he would get enough opportunity, he'd be my only fantasy. I just love that dude so much. I think
you do love him an unhealthy amount. All right, so we got one more player pick. Is there any handcuffs that you feel strongly about, whether it's a receiver, running back, tight end, whatever?
I think Josh Palmer has wide receiver 1 potential in that offense. So the fact that he's still there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's ball. Let's do that. I'm not even going to waste my time thinking about defense and kicker. I do think Jake Moody would probably be my pick if I have the choice of any of them, but that's here or there. So B+, not great, not amazing. I think they're the downside of the Kyler Murray and Laporta going somewhat early is that you look at the bench and you're really banking on these guys to deliver and hoping that some of these guys break out. I think
in hindsight, we don't take Laporta there because it was a completely different draft when we were getting there 3 or 4 rounds later and Engram was still there. If I know something like that, I wouldn't even consider Laporta.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So that was kind of like our middle of the road, or that was our back half. Let's switch over to the middle of the road. So let's just hit that 5th spot. So you can see here, one of the nice things about this tool is that there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of hook it up. So if you have different scoring rules, if you want to do like a snake draft, if you want to have like advanced pick logic, I think that's like a pro feature if you subscribe to them or upgrade. The other thing that you can do that's pretty cool, I don't believe that it's free, but if you hook your league settings into it, what you can do then is based on like the history of your league, they'll draft or try to draft within that. So pretty slick tool. You can decide how you want to draft against and all that good stuff. And then if you say like, hey, like I want to upgrade position values or whatever to high, low, whatever, then you can make that happen. So Drew has vanished into the sunset, but as this loads up, oh, you got a cat on the loose.
Yeah, she just keeps trying to eat tape on my desk. Stop.
Dope. So as we jump into this, a lot of options when you're in the middle of the draft. You can either walk away on the first round with some high-profile wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson. You could take one of the early elite running backs, Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson. Drew, if you're in these middle picks, which it seems that you are for most of your drafts, where are you looking at moving the needle here?
I haven't really considered wide receiver at all in these picks, unless CMC, Brees, and Bijan go in the top 3 or 4. I'm not even considering a wide receiver. I mean, for me, it's a slam dunk here. I'm going Brees Hall. I like to get that hero running back early and just, really focus on wide receivers over the next few rounds because there's so many solid ones in that area. I want to get my star running back. If you can hit on your star running back and they're a top 2 or 3 running back and they stay healthy and then you do well on the wide receiver, that's how you win championships, I believe, this year.
Yeah. I think the thing for me, I also am a big Brees Hall fan. I see the potential in someone like a Bijan Robinson, who was highly touted coming out of college. He got a lot of action last year, but also has a lot of touches potentially being taken away by Tyler Algier. His rookie year, he ran for 1,000 yards, so he's no slouch. But we also have a new offense in Atlanta. So a little bit of questions around like how is Kirk Cousins going to impact that offense? I think it ideally would be a good thing. Personally, like I mentioned, I think Justin Jefferson, like to me, like he's wide receiver 2 for me. I would take him over anybody that's not CeeDee Lamb. However, the reason I don't like drafting in the middle this year is because if you don't take Brees Hall or Bijan here, then you aren't getting access to really anybody else in that back half, unless maybe like a Gibbs slips or something like that. I don't want to take Pacheco or somebody like that in the middle of the second round. So I don't like the way that works. It's interesting. Brees Hall only had
RB at that point.
Yeah, right. And it's interesting. Brees Hall only had 1 carry inside the 5-yard line last year.
Yeah, and Bijan Robinson had 3.
Like it's wild. So I think that there's a lot of upside there. Really dig the Brees Hall pick. I also love Amon-Ra St. Brown, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna take Brees there. So coming back on the flip side, so we're seeing kind of a similar sort of feel here where we've been on both ends. Marv Harrison, a lot of people are saying that he could be worthy of this like top 15, top 16 pick. He feels a little bit rich for my blood there. Looking at the other receiver options, though, I don't know if there's anybody that I would rather take in that kind of group, though. I mean, even just looking at it's like Harrison, Adams, London, Olave, Waddle. I don't know. I don't feel great about really anything that's being listed there. On the running back side, you could potentially go ETN. And like I said, I don't feel great about taking any of these guys in the second round. To me, these are all third-round players. So, Drew, where are you leaning with the second pick?
We view them differently, and I think we've talked about this. You don't like to draft rookies too early, but I wouldn't even hesitate to go take Marvin Harrison Jr. here. I think that he's going to be an elite wide receiver 1. I think he has top 10 upside.
There you go. Yeah, I think the struggle for me is it's just like outside of Jamar Chase, who was drafted his rookie year like in the 8th round because of the drops issues that he had in preseason. There's only 3 wide receivers that were drafted in the top 15 that have been wide receiver 15 or better their rookie year.
I will put my stamp on it that I would be absolutely shocked if Marvin Harrison's not a top 15 wide receiver. Okay. I'll be shocked.
So we'll see. The watching receiver on Netflix makes me want to take Davante Adams. I really like the volume that he's going to get. If you look at like what Michael Pittman did with Gardner Minshew, it was just the volume was insane. I think that's going to repeat for Davante Adams, but I would much prefer Adams in the 3rd than I would the 2nd.
Yeah. I'll say this too while this goes. There's going to be injuries. There always is every year. I think there's two rookie wide receivers in the top 15 at the end of the year, total points.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, and I think the thing that separates them is I don't really see much of a difference between like caliber of player and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. It's just the quality of quarterback that they have.
Yeah.
And it's how good can Daniel Jones be is going to be dependent on how far Malik Neighbors goes.
Yeah, and they'll manufacture touches for him. He's going to be closer to the line of scrimmage. Daniel Jones hopefully can hit something within 10 yards and let Malik run. but I'd be shocked if Marvin's not a top 15. I wouldn't be shocked if he's top 10.
No, I hear that for sure. Okay, so looking at this next kind of wave of picks, we're seeing a lot of similar faces that we had on the tail end in our previous draft. One of the options that we didn't have that's surfacing here, which I want to just bring up as a point of conversation, is that Jalen Hurts is available, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft, or like viewed in the draft right now. Do you have any interest in taking a stab at Hurts or say like Patrick Mahomes with this 3rd round pick?
I haven't really seen myself going quarterback earlier than round 4, and it's been really rare that I even did that. I mean, I think Olave is a good value here. Kind of surprised that he's still there. I'd like to see what the running backs look like.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't want to make the same mistake we did last time and go Laporta again. I like Kamara too. I think even though his age, I think that he's going to be pretty solid as an RB2. Rachaad White, I still think Rachaad White's going to take a step back, so I haven't drafted him as much.
Yeah.
I'd probably be looking at wide receiver again. I don't know what else is there besides Olave.
Yeah, so wide receivers, usual suspects. So Olave, Waddle, Pittman, Cooper Kupp. I think for me, I don't feel crazy about any of the running backs here at ADP. I would like to see who falls on the way back. I think it would be a bit early to take Kamara if it was me. And then I think I don't feel crazy about Olave either, but I do like him at the value in the 3rd round. I think that with Derek Carr, his injury impacted more than we think. I don't think Rashid Shaheed is as big of a deal in the offense as everybody wants him to be. I do think he's the wide receiver too, but like Chris Olave is a good wide receiver. And if you're saying that like Malik Neighbors can be a top 15 player, Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
So like, what is stopping? Like, I don't want Chris Olave to be my 1, but I would be happy with him being my 2. So I'd say let's lock in with this Olave pick. If you feel differently about like the receivers, I think that the theme that we're seeing, especially in this back half, I think if you are a team that's in the first 4 picks, you can hit the running back again in the 3rd round if you want to, or if you take a wide receiver first, you can hit that like the Pacheco kind of grouping of players there, get a nice guy in the start of the 2nd. But I think here in the middle and the back half of the drafts, you really want to have that one running back and then double tap on the wide receivers. That's just how I've felt way better about my teams when I've done that.
Yeah, and even then, I kept going with the wide receiver. I just feel like the way it goes, like like if this was my mock, I'd probably taken Cooper Kupp here. I feel really good about the wide receiver there.
Yeah. And having Cooper Kupp as a flex is like kind of insane. If you just think like a couple years removed from being like undisputed wide receiver 1 to like, oh yeah, like I'm just going to throw him into the flex.
And if he stays healthy, that's what you're expecting.
Right.
Puka and him are not going to eat into each other. They throw enough that Stafford can support both.
Yeah. So just for a sanity check real quick. So we still got the Kamara, Cook, Mixon, Walker. I think out of this group, I like Ken Walker the most. Yes. And I would hope that he's there in the 5th. Agreed. And that to me, it's like, all right, like I'm probably leaning Kupp here. I could see the allure just like from a football perspective of Brandon Ayuk. Love the player. If he goes to the Steelers, probably feel a lot more inclined. I think that these other 2 guys will be here going into the 5th. So to me, it's a Cooper Kupp kind of play. If you did want to go tight end, I still think it's too early. I think Trey McBride's being overdrafted.
Agreed.
I would consider maybe like a Mark Andrews in the next swing. So we're gonna roll with Kupp here, Oni here.
Yes.
All right, cool. So we're back into kind of a similar feel. We see Kenneth Walker, Trey McBride's still there. We could dip into that 2nd running back position, as we said. Looking at the receiver room, if we really wanted to, we could start getting into more of that bench depth there. Don't know if I'd necessarily go there quite yet. But looking at the tight ends, it looks like where did he go? So Mark Andrews went 407, which saddens me. I hope that people don't view him as like a sexy tight end pick, and we'll go with McBride and Kincaid over him because I personally would prefer to have Andrews, but we'll see what happens. So Drew, we're back on the clock for 5:05. Where are we leaning?
Yeah. If this was my team, I'd be probably leaning to the running back spot here, but I want to argue and say I want to see what it looks like if we take Anthony Richardson here, because round 5 is probably the first spot I would consider him. So we're right in the range where I think it's fair. But I'll let you decide on the tiebreaker. But I think that Richardson's actually kind of interesting here.
Yeah, I think looking at the running backs that are left, I think that you can still get another starting caliber player. I think like a Monty, maybe even like Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift. I think they'll all be there. I think if I was doing this, I'm probably going Ken Walker or looking at like Malik Neighbors here and then seeing what's happening on the wide receiver end of things. I think that Metcalf and Moore, like they're still going to be the alphas in the offense. Like I would love to have one of these guys like a bench option. Like I think that would be super sick. So I would probably hit here and then see what happens on the running back side. If you want to do the quarterback now thing, I'm cool with that too.
I'm good with whatever you want to do. Like I'm high on Neighbors here too. I just think that I wouldn't expect Richardson to be here in round 5. So that's the reason why I think it's interesting.
Okay. I think that he will be pretty often.
When I draft for context, I draft mock drafts with live people. I don't typically use the Fantasy Pros aggregate. So you see a lot of what people are doing just based on like their own, these are the guys I like. These are the guys I don't want to risk losing. Like Richardson goes in round 4 quite a bit. We've seen a lot of him going ahead of guys like Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, which a lot of experts have been against. So it's just like the feel good pick. Like if you want to win with the guys that you like, you know what I mean? So yeah. I don't see a lot of Richardson in round 5 when I do those mocks. So that's why it's different for me when I do these aggregate mock drafts with those rankings.
Make your dreams come true then, Drew. You don't got to sell me on it, friendo. I personally just don't think he's going to stay healthy, and I can't waste a 5th round pick on someone that I don't have confidence in their ability to stay healthy for. So.
Yeah, that's when I draft Richardson, I always try to pair him with like Jaden Daniels on the back end.
Yeah.
You need to have that safety blanket when you draft him.
Cool. Yeah, I feel that for sure. All right. So before we get to the 606, we got Goat Ronnie also coming in from Twitch. Welcome to the show, Ronnie. He said that he picked 10 of 10, went AJ Brown, then Gibbs. I think that's a great start for sure. We kind of touched on it in the first half of this show, hitting that high-end wide receiver, high-end running back. It gives you a lot of flexibility as you navigate through the mid-rounds there from the 3 through 5. So if those are the guys that you felt good about, I'm definitely stamp of approval here. So definitely good stuff, and hopefully you had a good rest of your draft. All right, Drew, looking at the 606, I think we're seeing a lot of similar faces with a 10-team league. I think that's pretty much expected. So we're back into that T. Higgins, Christian Kirk, Zay Flowers, Ramondre Stevenson stuff. If we look at who else is there, you could go Scary Terry. You also have Monty there as well, sneaking in. Do you want to attack like your running back 2? Do you want to load up on wide receivers? We don't have anybody on the bench yet. What are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I've done mocks that look exactly like this, and I've still waited on the running back position. I feel so good about the RB1 that I have, and I think that there's guys going later that I think are reasonable RB2s. I mean, I would consider Ramondre here, but I think I would probably, go for the wide receiver route again, seeing who's there. I like Higgins. Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Who's there at tight end?
Tight end, you still got Ingram, Pitts, George Kittle, Ferguson. I would expect that at 7, I would say that 3 out of those 4 will probably still be there.
Yeah, so I feel like we're good about that too. What about wide receiver? Because we only saw like
wide receiver. You've got Flowers, Higgins, Kirk, McLaurin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good about a lot of stuff here. If you want to get your RB2, that way you feel better about it and take Ramondre, I'm good with that. But I also like a lot of these wide receivers. I think that we could go in any route because I like a lot of players that are left at the running back position. So I'm good with what you want to do.
All right. So I think if it's me, I really like hammering wide receiver like in the 3 through 7 rounds. I do feel like there's not really a lot left in the running back room. I mean, you only have like a pretty much like 8 to 10 guys that are left that are going to be like what I would consider like startable players going into week 1. Looking at the list, we have one team. Well, there's two teams. I think that Russell Wilson's going to start week 1. So I'm going to say one team that hasn't decided who they're starting at quarterback, and that's New England Patriots. Are they starting Jacoby Brissett with what's probably the worst wide receiving group in football right now? Or are they going to start Drake May and just throw him to the slaughter? To me, that doesn't bode a lot of confidence for Ramondre Stevenson. To me, it's like David Montgomery has an elite offensive line. He already has a co-starting running back who's already dinged up from injury and all of the makings of being the goal line back for this team. To me, Montgomery becomes the pick here, and then I can start messing around with like depth on the receiver side.
Yeah, I'm good with Montgomery. I'd also probably pick Swift. I didn't see that he was there until you went back into the RB spot. I'm high on Swift based on the money. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. On the marathon yesterday, Adam Schefter took Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and he said, I'm just getting every rushing touchdown that the Lions are having, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's one a week. That's what he was at. Like, that's crazy to think about, but it's that realistic.
Cool. All right. So we got another question in the chat. So we got Tristan here. What's good with your man? So he's got a keeper league. He has CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. If I keep both, I lose a first and second rounder. 2 QB league, we have to drop Justin Jefferson, right?
This is tough, actually, to be honest, because it is a two QB league. So you want to get a quarterback early. So that's what makes it difficult. If he's going to lose both of those picks, he might be SOL on the quarterback front, depending on.
So you got to think, if people can keep 2, how many quarterbacks do you think ultimately get kept?
That's the thing. We don't know that, but you have.
But just like if you were to guess, like who is the worst quarterback that you would keep in a keeper scenario?
So, real quick, can we ask him what the keeper parameters are?
No.
Like, are you just losing your first 2? Like, are you just
no QB keepers? Okay.
So they're all there.
Okay.
So if the parameters are where there's guys that are taking a rookie that they drafted, like what if Puka Nacua, who went undrafted, is one of someone's keepers and they're losing like round 15?
I think it's I get what you're saying. Like, is it like a cumulative, like because I drafted them high, they are
exactly. That's how most keepers are, and he's losing rounds 1 and 2. So that's the problem. I don't think that unless most people are losing rounds 1 and 2 because of their keepers, you don't want to keep both of them.
So it says you lose around plus 2 picks. Yeah. I think you keep 1. I think you do have to you drop Jefferson.
Yeah.
And if it's a bad enough situation, you probably can draft him again in the first or whenever it is. Truthfully, unless they're both going to be the first rounder, I would take whoever the lesser of the 2 cost is, if there is a difference, and then drop the other one.
Yeah, like if you're losing a second round for Lamb, because Jefferson would have been 101 probably last year, right? So you would expect that you're losing Jefferson in round 1. I would probably keep Lamb.
So he said it's a first regardless. So if it's a first regardless, then I'm taking CD, dropping Jefferson, see what happens. He's kept them both for 2 years, which that's pretty dope.
Yeah, you have to make sure you have one of those picks, because in a 2 QB league, it's not like if it's super flex and you can start someone else in the flex, it's different. But if you have to start 2 QBs, you need to make sure you get one early, and you might need to carry 3. And there's,
I am very much into I love that when people kind of do the 2 QB rankings or whatever, but it's like, all right, so if I'm looking at the rankings right now for 2 QB season long ranks, so you got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. If I show this to you, can you see this window? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Christian McCaffrey. So let's look. So we got CeeDee Lamb at 8, and then you've got Jefferson at 19. So let's just assume that this person had a good year last year. So they're probably going to be in the 30 to 32. Like, would I rather have, say, Justin Herbert around 24 and then another receiver? Or would I rather have ads for days on this website? Awesome. Or would I rather take Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb and then go after like Matt Stafford, Jaden Daniels, Deshaun Watson? I think I would rather take the receivers. Because all of the top guys that are really going to be difference makers are going for people that aren't keeping in the first round.
When we don't know what other people are keeping, so it makes it very difficult, but he probably doesn't know either. And I just think the safest bet is to make sure you can get one quarterback early, because you need to have one early. If you don't get one of the top 10 guys and he keeps first 2 picks and then literally 10 to 12 quarterbacks go in the first 2 rounds, he's looking at those guys you're saying as his QB1.
Sure.
And I think that that's a real assessment. Like Zana was in a C-Madden had an 18-team league 2 years ago that Zana.
Terrible. It was a terrible league, and I'm glad that I didn't do it.
It was very funny to watch that pick. Like Zana risked it and took a running back early, and not many people like caught on. In fact, needed quarterback, so she was still able to get Kyler in the second round. But after that they just all were gone. Like there was nothing.
Okay, so to your point, if I need 2 QBs, I basically need 2 guys that I feel comfortable with at pick 36.
Yes.
So
and you might not have them.
But I think that he will, because you can't keep people are going to keep.
Well, let's ask him this. He's obviously been in this league for multiple years. He's kept them twice, and he won last year. Buddy, when you drafted last year and people kept early, did the quarterbacks fly off the board or not? Because if you know your league and you don't think they're going to fly off the board, then Joe's right. Keep them both. But if you're worried that they're going to fly off the board, you need to drop one of them.
Well, I guess it's like, would you rather have, say, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, and say Justin Herbert, or would you rather have CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Baker Mayfield? Give me the second one all day.
I don't want anything to do with Baker Mayfield after his OC left. I think that he's going to be a completely different player now that Canales is gone. Right? It was Canales?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's safe. Like, I think that you have to bank on, in that scenario, I think you need to bank on the Steelers starting Fields, because Russ is not going to be anything. Like, let's just think about the quarterbacks who's startable, because you're going to need 2, right? So
sidebar. QBs are going relatively quick.
Yeah, you need to get a quarterback early. You have to. And he's already picking at the 10-11 turn. So he's probably looking at a mid-tier quarterback right then and there. Like, he's probably looking at Kyler or Herbert right there at 11. Like, go to the quarterback. Just filter for quarterbacks. This is a great question. I love this.
Well, it's not going to give you what you want, because you want to be able to look at the 2 QB stuff. So
I just want to count them out, right? So if you go to quarterbacks, right, if they're going relatively quick,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Flexibility. Like when you draft a dynasty league that's 2 QB, like literally the first 8 of the 10 picks typically are quarterbacks, and then you see Jefferson and Chase go off 9, 10. You know, like,
yeah. I don't know. I just feel like how many, so if we say let's say we're going to be conservative.
He likes Baker. So, I mean, I'm not as high on Baker. I think that he was built.
But I'm saying, like, let's be conservative and say, like, all of the quarterbacks that go before pick 40 are gone. So including Jaden Daniels. Like, to me, the dream scenario would be Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, you take Jaden Daniels, and then you get, like, I can't draft Deshaun Watson on principle, but like Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Will Levis, you could throw a dart at.
Those are all guys I want to be my QB2. So that's
sure, yeah. But I'm saying, like, you can definitely get one of those guys as a QB2. So
yeah,
who are you comfortable?
Get your QB1 is where that's the thing. Like, you need to get your QB1, and he needs one of those picks to get his QB1. If you don't have those picks and they go off the board early, he's starting Levis and potentially Baker.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, and this is you in Dynasty who's been like scrapping Will Levis, Tannehill, and Bryce Young over the last 2 years.
But those weren't my teams to start. I took Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson in both of our dynasty leagues, and I've been tearing that ass up.
Yeah, but you fall apart when you face teams with good quarterbacks. Like,
no, because I traded for Patrick Mahomes and I drafted Jared Goff late.
You took advantage of someone who made a bad deal on the Mahomes. That's really helped you. But like,
yeah, right, I did.
What about when you traded to our boy Eddie? How that hurt you really bad. You got lucky to last where you did just because Flacco popped off, but you have to bank on something like that.
Sure, but like
it could happen, right? But like, I think that the safer bet is to ensure you can get one of those quarterbacks at 11. You need to get at least one. I think you're looking at Kyler.
So you're saying, all right, let's just assume that everybody takes a quarterback 1 through 10.
If they fly like that, right?
Right. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Let's assume that everyone's keeping.
So Kyler Murray would be your best available option, or like a Tua or something like that.
If everyone keeps a first rounder though, and he's at the turn because he won, he might be picking Josh Allen.
No.
Well, why not? Because he would have the first.
Because if you are the number 1 pick in that league and you should be smacked in the head.
All I'm saying is that he's losing a first, right? If other guys are
losing a first because of you basically every year that you keep someone, it goes up by 2. He's at the brim for those guys,
right? But
not everyone's keeping in the first and second round.
But if you're keeping a guy like Bijan, who was drafted early last year, you're probably losing your first. If you're keeping a guy like, I guess it doesn't. I have to see who they're picking, but like if there's multiple guys that are also losing their first, then he's going to get a higher end quarterback though. But if they're not like that, he's going to be looking at a mid-tier quarterback right off the bat. Sure. Because those quarterbacks are going to go off the board.
Okay. So for the sake of the viewers, it's been a great conversation. You are saying keep one, get a QB.
I'd rather feel safe about knowing I'm getting one of my top 10 quarterbacks. But if 5 people are losing first rounders, then I feel better about keeping both because those 5 picks are wiped off the board and they're not quarterbacks anymore, right?
Right.
But if a lot of guys have first round picks, my assumption is that the quarterbacks are going to go first.
Probably true. Okay, so you're saying go 1 and 1.
It's really up to him in the sense that he knows his league.
Come on.
You have to know
10 toes down on it. There are 10 quarterbacks, and they will be the top 10 quarterbacks.
Hey, I would rather have one of the top quarterbacks by keeping one. But if he knows his league mates to the point where he doesn't think they're going to go, then I risk it. But I don't know anyone he's drafting with, and I don't know if they're going to take quarterbacks or not. I would rather feel safe taking one of them and making sure I can get a quarterback. You're getting a top wide receiver and potentially a top quarterback in that situation in a 2 QB league.
Then why not keep neither of them and potentially have the option of seeing what's available?
I'm fine with that too. Honestly, like I prefer that, to be honest, because like I think quarterbacks will go and he could probably get one of them in the turn.
Yeah. I'm gonna give one last piece of advice and then we're gonna nix this. But so I have a keeper league that it's a 1 keeper, it's automatically a first round keep, right? So my general strategy is, if just from like a game theory perspective, there's 12 teams. If I don't have a top 6 player, I'm not keeping, because the worst case, I lose somebody that like I miss out on a couple ADP. So I'm drafting 12th this year, defending champ, no big deal. I have CeeDee Lamb. I have CeeDee Lamb as ADP of 2, so I'm going to keep him because I'm never going to make up that value on this backside.
Right.
So to your point, we're saying that, all right, CeeDee Lamb is an 8 piece, like, and then you have Justin Jefferson sitting around 20.
I agree with you 100%.
So basically what we're at, just let me finish, is that so Justin Jefferson we're saying is a value of 19.
Yeah.
I'm keeping him at 11. If I don't keep Justin Jefferson and everybody takes a QB, at 11, I can still go and get Justin Jefferson.
Yes.
So I would say keep one, let Jefferson free. If you don't like what's out there, or if the draft is moving away from quarterbacks that you think you can get one later, then draft him again. So
It's very
that's my
important
final
too
answer.
that he doesn't snake himself into just taking a quarterback from fear. So like if you get up there and let's say who the best quarterback potentially could be, like
I mean, you're looking at like realistically, if no one keeps, you're going to be like in Joe Burrow, Jordan Love land, Dak Prescott.
yeah. So if you're in that situation, you would have to assume that they're not going to go QB that early in the first 3 rounds.
But a lot of people do though.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, I mean, it's the 2 QB situation really puts a wrench in this whole thing. Like,
Yeah, who would create a 2 QB league, Drew?
in Dynasty, it's a completely different story.
Still
Redraft,
garbage. Super
redraft,
flex, baby.
in redraft, that's wild, but in
Yeah.
Dynasty, I feel like that's normal.
Yeah. So final answer, stamp on the show. Keep one, let one ride. You can always redraft the other guy.
Yeah, your logic at the end there was perfectly.
Yeah. I psyched myself out. I was gonna go keep both wide receivers. Let's dance.
That's where I thought you were going. I was
how
you could do that.
I was. But I feel confident in my ability to get QBs late. So
I understand your thought process though, because you're looking at the ADP of both players. They're both of value if you keep them at their position.
And I think initially I was thinking from the ADP of redraft where it's like I got a 2, I got a 5.
Yes.
Screw it, I'll figure it out. But if Jefferson's gonna be in 20, yeah. So yeah, I would say keep one, let one go. You can always get it back. Cool. That was fun.
Was great. Yeah, that was great.
All right. So we are drafting. Maybe. Where's my draft?
Did we time out?
No, I'm just on the wrong thing. Okay. All right. So we are back on the clock. A lot of the guys that we still like are there. Let's try to wrap this up pretty quick. We're already at an hour on the show. For those of you that have been sticking with us, definitely appreciating the love. I'm sitting right at 97 viewers for the day, so that's pretty cool. I wouldn't want 97 people to have to listen to me talk, but we're making it happen. Must be for you, Drew, so that's pretty awesome.
No chance.
We've already talked about T. Higgins, somebody that we really like. Just to look at the running backs real quick, you have Ramondre there as well. We don't have anybody on the bench. Where do you want to attack this from a positional perspective? Tight end room, you still got Engram, Ferguson, Njoku. Where are you feeling?
Wow, they took the worst picture of Brock Bowers there and threw that on there.
There's not a good picture of him. Like he needs to hit up LeBron. He kind of looks like what I would imagine like an everyday office dude with like a bad Hawkinson like wig.
The whole like picture, like the way it looks, not even just him, it just looks like he's running up next to Forrest Gump while he's just running for no reason.
He looks like a deflated cone head. It's pretty wild. But anywho, to me, I think the pick for me would be Higgins.
Yep. And
see what pops on the other side. I do want to get another running back just because we are a little bit light on that sense.
Yeah,
if I could go back in time and redo this again, I probably would pass knowing that I could get Rice, Godwin, Johnson.
Yeah.
And I feel more inclined to have to take Javonte here.
Yeah.
So we're going to undo it and we're going to make the world a better place. So we're going to take.
You did that for Laporta?
No, we couldn't. We already lived by it. But now I think this is one of the things that I really like about doing like the draft simulators and stuff like this. It's like, oh, like I thought I wanted this, but I don't. We got into it and it was like, now I have like really no sustainable backup running back situation. And there's still all of these great options in the 8th round that are going to be wide receiver 2 flex options in the passing game. So from the receiver room, who do you like out of this different group?
This is the perfect scenario to segue into what I want to talk about. I don't know how Rashee Rice is still going where he's gone.
I was hoping you were going to take him because that was who I would take as well.
Rashee Rice should be going in the top 5 rounds to me, and people are still over exaggerating his case, but they're not going to suspend him while the investigation is still going. Yeah. The investigation is not going to be finalized for the season. I don't think that they would suspend in season. I feel like they would push it into the off season. I don't think there's any risk there, and his ADP has not adjusted.
Yeah. No, I like the Rashee Rice pick. I like everybody that's on the screen right now.
Agreed.
I think he just has the most upside. I think they obviously drafted these other options for the Chiefs, but I think that he's still going to be that top 2 target for them. So let's do it. And then we still have Deontay there. Javonte still as like a running back 4 if you want to go in that direction. Deontay is somebody that I'm really high on this year, so I would probably lean that direction.
Agreed.
But I think Deontay or Javonte probably going to be my pick. You still have Ingram and Ferguson sitting out there. If we look at the board real quick, most teams except for there's quite a few teams that don't. So you got one, us, two, and then there's only one more team that hasn't picked a tight end yet. So I still feel good waiting there. I would be fine. I really want Ingram Ferguson. I would live with Njoku, but we'll see where we go. So between Deontay, Javonte, what are you feeling?
So I like both guys. I know we've talked a ton about this. I do think that there's risk with Javonte Williams because of how Sean Payton may handle that running back room. I think Deontay is the safer, and he's the guy I would pick.
Cool. All right. So now we're getting into the later picks here. Evan Ingram, Jake Ferguson, still there. I think at this point, I probably want to take one of those two. Crazy that you can get either one of those guys in the 10th round. Do you feel one way or the other about the two?
Can you so we have the undo button. I just want to hypothetically see if they would last.
Okay. Who is your other person that you would take?
I need to see more from the positions. I'm not really a fan of much of there. Not really a fan of that either.
I almost would have rather taken Javonte and then got one of these receivers like a Jordan Addison, a Lad McConkey. But that's fine. We don't need to abuse the undos. We don't live in our fears here.
Let's be spicy here. The reports are Brian Thomas is absolutely killing it. And why don't we throw a dart there? Because I feel like if a tight end,
we'll definitely be able to wait because his ADP, like we're not really close. We're like 20 picks out from that.
I should have full screen so I can actually see those words.
That helps.
I'm trying to see the chat though. You can't do both. Did Daniels go? Probably.
No.
See that we took Richardson, right? So this is where I would pick Daniels as my safe. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then you still have Evan Ingram there and Ferguson.
I'd probably just grab Ingram at this point.
Yeah.
Make sure.
Okay. And then you still have Brian Thomas there, a little bit more suitable in the ADP. Maybe a little bit early, but yeah, they are saying a lot of good things about him. I think you do want to get there. Yeah, you see that the other tight end that we were looking at also went. So still some options there. Any other players that you want to take a stab at from a bench perspective? I don't want to spend too much time talking about these because we've hit kind of the back half of the back end of the draft quite a bit. So any position player.
I'd probably throw a dart here at running back, and I would go between Chuba Hubbard, who I think is going to be relevant all season with Brooks coming off the ACL. And I think that Rico Dowdle is going to be the more efficient runner in Dallas. And I think that he has value, especially this late. So
I think the other thing too, now that you say that, is it's like, all right, so it's obviously saying that we're reaching here at this ADP, but if we think about the structure of this team right now, we have three guys that we feel pretty strongly locked into our wide receiver room. And unless they disappoint, we still have two guys that are number one target getters. To me, while I could go after like a Brian Thomas Jr., he's going to have to do a lot to supplant those guys. To me, when I'm flushing out the rest of this room, realistically, I'm taking one of the two of Chuba and Dowdle, and then hoping that the other guy falls back to the other end, and then kind of doing the same thing with like, hey, like how do I want to fill that last roster spot? If you're that worried about Ingram, you could look at Pat Freiermuth from like a target tight end for that late round. But I think that's how like use your team to figure out where is going to be the best value for those bench spots because no one's scoring points from you.
I'd probably go running back again here.
Yeah. Any feelings between Ty Chandler and Jaleel McLaughlin?
So there was
I like Jaleel.
I'm a Chandler guy, mainly because I think that he has standalone value on his own. I think that Aaron Jones is, he's up there, and I don't think that they want to run him into the ground. So I think Chandler has standalone, Jaleel has standalone. But if we want to go for a guy that has like league winning upside, if they're an injury away, it's Tyler Algier, who is also sitting there. So it depends.
Yeah, and that would be interesting. I know that a lot of people say that you should handcuff your own players. I personally like to handcuff other teams' players. Like I'm working under the assumption that everybody that I have drafted here is going to survive the season. That's why I won't draft Anthony Richardson. So it's like if you were going to say take Bijan, I'm not going to turn around and also draft Algier because if Bijan gets hurt, then like that really sucks. But
Yeah.
if I'm taking Breece Hall and then you can get Algier, who's proven to run for 1,000 yards, and then you can have both of them already loaded at the clip, I mean, that's how I would take it for sure. So
That's what also makes Breece Hall a little more valuable and an edge over Bijan, because Breece Hall's handcuffs probably aren't getting drafted.
yeah,
So you can get them later.
cool. Yeah, so we're sitting at a 91 out of 100 on this draft. So obviously things that we would have done a little bit different, but I do like the bones of this team a lot better than the first draft that we had. So good stuff there, Drew. Let's get out of the full screen sharing mode and get our faces up there so everybody can see. Anything else that you want to share with the class before we adjourn for the day?
No, man, I'm just psyched. I got my big draft on Friday. I am defending champ in that one. Hopefully that goes well. It's a live draft. Hopefully everybody else gets drunk, and then I will just pick smart picks with my water.
That's usually my draft strategy, but cool deal, man. All right. So if you haven't been with us before, this is your first time drafting, this will probably be the last show that we do from like a mock perspective. We're going to get more into our regular cadence this following week. So you can see our handles underneath our name on X. If you want to follow the show or interact with us in any way, you can find us on X at 412FF show, on YouTube at Around the 412, or on Twitch at Around the 412. Also, something we'll post in the comments of this episode. One of the things that we do as like a podcast group is Rocking Around the 412. I believe this is year 6 of that, where we take kind of like donations from different people, and we try to make Christmas and the holiday season a little bit better for children in the Pittsburgh area. So we've been able to raise over $35,000. I think it's like $35,000 or give or take in that ballpark in the last 6 years. I want to keep that going. And then last but not least, tomorrow, Washington Wild Things, Around the 412 day. Tyler throwing out the first pitch, dollar beer night. It's going to be a good time. So we'll see what happens. But if nothing else, until next time, Wednesdays, always Wednesdays. And yeah, we're going to unleash the Only Fantasies next week.
Yes, I've made my decision as well. So
wow. So we'll get into our Tinders. We'll get into our Only Fantasies. But yeah, it's going to be a good time. So usually around the 5:30 mark on the East Coast. But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Joe Frick. That's Drew Hannes. Keep balling out there, kids.
luck in your drafts, y'all.
Good luck.